Yo, okay, just me here. This is going to be a podcast where I go over a bunch of things that people have been messaging me about and a bunch of concepts that I think are really key. So, if you want to get a good idea of the concepts and principles that I believe in or kind of daily thoughts, you should add me on Twitter. It's Josh Chessman, or actually it's at Chessman Josh on Twitter. I recently posted something that I'm going to start with, and this is my 3 non-negotiables. The 3 non-negotiables I put are be vulnerable, be intentional, and have grit. So if you listen to the first episode of this podcast, you'll probably understand that there's a similarity there, or actually quite a strong correlation. Those are the 3 things that I wanted to try to get out of each podcast. And I don't claim to be, super great at interviewing people or talking with people or even being a great speaker. But the ideas, I think it's important to, get these ideas rocking around in people's heads so that they can gain some more satisfaction, some more happiness, some more connection, and to keep things fun and interesting too. Because like some of you guys, I like to think a lot, and that can be a downfall, but I like to think of it as a strength. So hopefully you do too. Be vulnerable. What I mean by that is I have noticed that I can connect with people better, whether that's client, trainer relation, family, partners, new friends, whatever it is, when there's a level of vulnerability. I think Brené Brown said it probably best, but I'm going to paraphrase because I don't remember what she said. And I think that vulnerability is the gateway to connection. I'm literally just looking at my phone on my Twitter as we go here. I'm not quoting any Brené Brown directly. I know she had her PhD, I think, in shame, and she has a book about vulnerability. Courage is, no, what's that one she has? Daring Greatly. That's it. Courage is Calling is Ryan Holiday. So I think there needs to be a level of vulnerability in order to have connection. I truly think that. And I'm curious to see what you guys think, but where I think that comes in as a coach is having some boundaries around that. I think this is probably the most challenging part of being a coach, and having this non-negotiable being be vulnerable. There's a little bit of vulnerability needed, I think. And then there's also a lot of listening. And I don't know that there's always a place where I need to demonstrate or explain a personal example. But I think vulnerability is really, really key. One of the ways that has helped me practice being vulnerable, because it's one thing just to say it. It's one thing that's, one of the issues I think we have with social media, and that is that we can just say anything. Like, here I am just saying stuff all day, and there's people that say more stuff than me, and there's people that say less things than me. And I mean, there's almost 8 billion people on this planet, and I think around half of us, or maybe it's like 4 billion people have access to internet. That's about to change. So there's a lot of people saying a lot of things, and I am one of those people. And I think it's important to back that up. So when I say be vulnerable, there's a men's group I'm a part of. I go there every week. It's 3 hours a week. It's a great commitment. I think to do something for 3 hours a week it's strong. It's awesome. If you can fit that in, awesome. If you can be a part of a group like that, whether it's a men's group or a women's group, whatever sex, whatever gender you identify with, I can say personally that it's helped me a lot. And I think in the future, I will try to be a part of leading some more groups like this. I know that's one thing that we talk about in the group is people need these spaces. And, it's hard to have more than 10, 15 people in a group from my experience in the group we're in. So more leaders need to step up to start more groups. But in order to be a leader, you need to be practicing, the ideals or the principles, or, be the right kind of person. The second thing is be intentional. I think this is just an element for life. I think being intentional has brought me a lot of life satisfaction, and it sort of reminds me, being intentional reminds me of the times where I'm not being intentional, or of the times where I'm just getting distracted. Distraction could be an intention as well, just so you know. Being intentional is not synonymous with like always working super hard. Kind of fits into that, but being intentional is having an idea of a reason to do something. The 3 non-negotiables, number 3 is have grit. So I just launched a program. I'm basically just launching a program called Grit 1.0. So this word is resonating with me hard. And this word covers a lot of what I think the program covers, which is why I called it Grit 1.0. And another reason why it's one of my non-negotiables. I think there's tons of times throughout our days, throughout our lives, where we can act with grit or express grit, like move with grit. And workouts happen to be one of those accessible things for most people, where we can choose to act with fucking grit, whether that means trying a little bit harder or giving up less, or giving up not as suddenly, or not giving up, or fighting through a little bit longer. What do we say grit is? Perseverance or endurance and time. Maybe that was what suffering is. Those words are very synonymous. Tweet 2. Want to become more capable? Recognize a challenge, smile, and accept. This is fucking grit, by the way. I think this is how I've become more capable with fitness. I think this is how I've become a little more capable as a dad. Recognizing a challenge, smiling, and accepting it. I need to give a props to Dan Groudon for this smile, because I remember one time, this is a guy that I used to train and work with, great athlete, dad as well. And he told me that one person that he used to train with, I believe, they used to do these really intense cycling intervals. And I believe the story is he looked over at her and she had a huge smirk on her face during this, like during the like fucking depths and the pit of the workout, where it was just grueling. And I think if you can find a way to smile during discomfort, there's definitely some tricks it plays on your brain, which can make it seem less uncomfortable. I just want to thank my sponsor, Michelob Ultra. Light beer. I have been drinking non-alcoholic beer lately, by the way. We'll get into that later. So here's the simple steps for this. If you want to be more capable, because this is something that I talk about a lot, and this is something that several of my clients are wanting to become more capable, more resilient, more tough, more better endurance, better fitness, but just be more dependable, more accountable, be able to do more shit. So I think one of the first steps, this will be a course eventually, but one of the first steps is just being aware that there's a challenge being presented to you. And if you can acknowledge that, be aware that there's a challenge being presented, acknowledge that, smile and accept. There's that smile, right? Trick your brain into thinking it's going to be easy, and just say yes. If you have the capacity, if you want to build your capacity, you have to say yes more. Saying yes to things means you're saying no to other things as well. Tweet number 3. It's not so much the thing as it is all the little things before it. So the example is, you want to face adversity and become more capable? Stop complaining about the weather every single fucking day. All right. So I'm reading my tweets out, right? And I pretty much use Twitter as a journal. I don't even know how to use Twitter, but I like this thought. Whether weather is one of those things that we all talk about. It's an easy way to connect with people. We all kind of know what's going on. It's relatable, blah, blah, blah. I think it is a huge issue. The way we talk about weather and the way in which it's not the fact that we want to connect. That's great. But it's the method. I think the more we complain, the more we're practicing complaining. And I think if you want to be more capable and better at facing adversity, I think we need to stop complaining as much. So I'm someone that hasn't had to face, I don't have an epic story of like Francis Ngannou, escaping the desert, like all this crazy shit. I don't have any like near-death experiences like a lot of people that would talk about, facing adversity. So I want to make sure I stay in my lane a little bit. But I also want to say, a lot of us, even if we're living slightly more normal or common lives, we still all face adversity. So to support my reason for saying this, we need to stop complaining about the weather, and we need to embrace the weather. The weather is a great opportunity for us to feel different stimulus, to connect with nature, and to become more comfortable by exposing ourselves to more discomfort. So it's raining. It's like, yeah, great. So you're going to get wet. Like that's all it is. You're going to get wet. So it's snowing. Okay. So it might be a little cold, getting some snow on your face. So it's hot. It's like, great. You're going to sweat more. Unless you're on the extreme sides of these things where, you get heat stroke every time you go outside, or you have some type of like disability where you can't do this stuff. Like, I don't know, 95% of people just complain, but then they also want more, but then they don't do anything about it. And I would actually say that more people are doing something about it by complaining. Here's what I mean by that. They may not be actively doing something towards it. So say most people want to live more happy, fulfilling lives, and a lot of people want to lose weight. So say you're overweight and you're unhappy. By complaining about something, you're actually working against yourself. So it's a little bit like one step back, because it doesn't seem as though in this example there's any steps forward. So by complaining and avoiding the adversity, or by avoiding the opportunity to do something, you're actually taking a step back. So I would argue that it's actually worse to do that than it is neutral. So if you're someone that wants to become more capable, you need to start recognizing that things can be opportunities and that you're going to be okay. We're not talking about anything life-threatening here. We're talking about things that everyone faces day to day, and a lot of people choose to complain about it. If you're the kind of person that can put up with, changes in weather, you're going to be really well off, because it's not going to shake you too much. Become unshakable. That's really what I'm talking about. Tweet number 5. If your life sucks and you don't want it to suck, then you need to change it. Isn't that the truth? I don't really have anything else to say to that. Here's something I'm going to mention here. Okay, tweet number 6. There are a lot of issues in our society, and I see a huge issue being men. I am a man. I identify as a man. Men don't have great role models. Men don't have courage. Men that don't have courage, pardon me. Then there's men that are too scared to be vulnerable, and there's men that are mentally fragile. So there's a couple concepts here. Kind of one concept is men that are lacking courage, and men that are also too scared to be vulnerable. I talked about the vulnerability piece, and I think that that's really, really important. And I think that we're mentally fragile because we don't feel comfortable. We don't feel safe to be vulnerable, and we don't feel safe to be vulnerable in order to be courageous, and we feel fragile. So we don't really do anything. I think it stems down from, there's a great speaker named Jackson Katz that talks about gender-based violence. This is a little bit off topic, but he is one of these people that I really like listening to. And he talks about gender-based violence. So violence around women being a men's issue, not a women's issue. And what I'm stealing from that is men don't have great role models. So I said in this tweet that I see a huge issue in our society being men. And I think as a man, part of the reason why I've, decided to post so much and to try to be more expressive on social media and these, alternative platforms is because I technically am in a position of, I don't know if power is the right word. People do follow me, and I coach people, and I'm a dad. So I'm technically in a position of power in some ways, not to sound elitist, but, having a son, I am in a position of power. He's my responsibility. I'm in a position of responsibility. I think that might be a better way to say it than a position of power. I think I've put myself in a position of responsibility because I see that there's a big issue in, I don't know, Canadian, maybe American society. I'm certainly not talking globally. I don't have the awareness to talk globally, but at least in our culture, there's a huge issue with men being poor role models, which subsequently I think makes other men lack courage, lack vulnerability, and become mentally fragile. So I think that's one of the reasons why when I post about this stuff, being more capable and being more resilient and strong and better endurance and complaining less, I think that's where my heart is leading by example and helping other men so that they have, truthfully, so they have easier lives. Train hard so you can live easy. The gym, coaching, training, being coached, these are ways that we can interact with all these kinds of concepts and become better people. And these are ways that we can, quote unquote, train hard. We can go through some of the shit so that we widen our perspective and so that we widen our sort of container of what comfort is. Let's go with this one. Yeah, our society is softer than a soup sandwich. Yeah, I think it is in a lot of ways. Although, I think that's just a great line, soup sandwich. But I do hear of, here's a great story. There's a book called Running on Empty. I think I forget where I got that. Simply put, it's a book about this guy who's like mid-50s. What's going on with this friggin' video? This guy's in his mid-50s. He's an endurance athlete, meaning he chose to start doing endurance training. He wasn't necessarily born, like not at all. He started when he was middle age. Started doing endurance races, running specifically, slowly got longer. There's this ultra marathon called Badwater, which is a 135-mile race across across Death Valley in California, which I believe is one of the, if not the hottest place on Earth. I think it's something around like 50 degrees Celsius. So to give you some context, because a lot of people that listen to this podcast aren't endurance junkies and don't follow ultra marathons. This Badwater, I mean, it sounds crazy, but this Badwater event is something that you have to qualify for. You can't just, be gung ho and show up to the start line. I'm pretty sure you still have to qualify. So you have to qualify, meaning you have to be an elite runner anyways. Then you do this 135-mile run across pavement with elevation. There's tons of elevation in it. There's a mountain range you go through. I think it's the second half of 135 miles. And you are, I don't know. I've never done it. I can't imagine what that feels like. But you get the context, 135 miles across the desert, and it's a running race. This guy in the book did that, right? He qualified, he did that event. Then he also did that race, which is 135 miles, and he did it 4 times consecutively. So he essentially went point A to point B, which is 135 miles. Then he went point B to point A. Then he went A to B, then B to A. So it ended up being like 500 and what was it? 275. Yeah. So it's like 546 miles or something like that. And he did it. So he did it 4 times back to back, 4 times consecutively. So strung it together. And what's really common in these races, from what I've heard, because I haven't done anything that extreme, is you have a crew. So you have people that are basically set up to be your like intra coach. They, they give you water, I guess, as much as you would need it. You'd need so much water. I can't imagine running for that long in the heat. So they give you water, they give you food, they help you with, I don't know, first aid, like the whole kind of shebang, all the things you can imagine, mindset, all those types of things. This guy carried all his own provisions in a 200-pound wagon. So not only did he do it 4 times back to back, but he carried all of his own provisions without having a crew. So what I'm getting at is society is soft, but you know what I'm realizing? The people that aren't soft are the people you don't know about, and the people that I don't know about. I don't claim to be a super mentally tough person. I like to broaden my comfort zone by subjecting myself to more discomfort, and I think it allows me to live an easier life by doing harder stuff. But I mean, this is next level stuff, and there's tons of examples of that. And I bet I could mention his name again, and 99 out of 100 people would not know who that is. And there's tons of examples of different crazy shit like this. So what I'm saying is our society is soft, my perspective, but there's tons of people walking around that are probably hard as fuck, and you wouldn't know about it because they're so humble and they're not doing it for the accolades or the recognition or whatever. They're doing it for whatever. I need to be interviewing more of these people, get more of them on the podcast. Here's a little thing for you to nibble on. Yes, I think our society is soft, but you know what a classic example of not being soft is women giving birth. And maybe you're a woman that has given birth. Props to you, mom. Props to Bree. Props to all people in my family that have given birth. We all know tons of women that have given birth, and like men aren't even set up to be able to tolerate that kind of pain. So this is why I say to some of my clients that have had kids, sometimes we'll go through exercises where I get them to write down all their accomplishments, right? For instance, it's kind of like goal setting, but it's a little different. And then what we'll do is we'll write down a list of all the things that they've accomplished. So not goals necessarily, but the things that they have done. And this becomes like, there's different people call this a different thing, but this becomes essentially a referenceable list of times that you were absolutely capable of doing something and you absolutely crushed something that a lot of people can't do. Right. So even in the case of this, these women giving birth, you're doing something that no man can do. So I think that if you're wanting an exercise out of this, that can be a really effective exercise I call it the rainy day. There's a couple exercises I call that, but the rainy day, when you're feeling down, or maybe you're not feeling like focused, or you're feeling like you can't do it, or like you want to give up, you reference that and you'll realize you're going to get the fuck up. Yeah, this is the next tweet. So how to gain mental toughness immediately: reflect on what's been hard in your life and remind yourself of that and how you got through it. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. I posted again about that. It's a really effective exercise. The sort of counter to that is an exercise I got from Tim Grover's book, Winning, about Michael Jordan. The exercise I got out of there was same type of list, same type of rainy day application, but you write down all your failures. I took it a little further and I wrote down all the things that I regretted. I wrote down all my failures. I wrote down all of the things that I got really upset about in my life, or that I still thought about, or that I still was like, oh, fuck. And I still have that. I kept it. So the exercise, you'd write all that stuff down. You actually want to keep that sheet because it's something that you can reference. And they're both whether it's your failures or your kind of like adverse moments, those are referenceable in order to help you get motivated. The failures one is really interesting. I did that before an assault bike or an echo bike test. I was riding my echo bike in my laundry room, which is, if you're talking about crappy atmospheres for testing power, it would be a laundry room. And my son was watching TV because I was looking after him. He was watching TV and the bike was right in front of him or right behind him. So I was looking at him watching TV, essentially crushing it on this bike. So I basically had a kid's show, a 2-year-old cartoon in the background. That's what I was listening to. I didn't have headphones in. And I referenced this sheet, this failure sheet. And I won't get into that because that's pretty personal. Maybe one day I will, but referencing all of these things, reading them all, and then going on that bike. And I just remembered, I'm like, I'm going to think about these things when I'm in hell here. And it was a 3-minute max calorie challenge, which I think is one of the hardest challenges. And that's what I thought about during that test, was some of these things that really, really, really resonate with me. So if you need something that's really deep, that might provoke some emotion, that's a really good one to do. Write that down. Let's go with, I'm going to read one more, and then I've had some questions about how I feel about certain people in the fitness industry. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this for a minute. Suffering has a place in training just as it has a place in life. So some of you guys may know I have a tattoo on my chest that says suffer. And certainly a lot of people ask me about it. I mean, fair enough. The reason I got it was, for me, it was a motivator. I have positive association with the word. To me, it doesn't mean like, loss necessarily, or, heartbreak, anything like that. This is where it kind of gets interesting, because I think we can have positive connotation or positive association with certain words. So for instance, suffering or discomfort, like I think the word, discomfort or being uncomfortable, in terms of like, in this container of the fitness industry, I think it's fairly accepted. I'm not sure if suffering is to the same degree, but I would lump those in as very similar words. So just as I've said a few times, I think the more comfortable we get with being uncomfortable, the more comfortable our lives get. But I think it's just like the analogy is, it's just like a muscle, right? You need to keep training it. Just because you get big muscles or you train to get bigger muscles doesn't mean they'll always be big. You have to keep training them to a certain extent in order to maintain that. And that's why I think suffering has a place in training, because for a lot of people, not for every single person, not everyone has to do grueling shit in order to prove to themselves that they can do stuff. There's other ways you can do it, but I'm a coach, so that's a lot of what I talk about is the actual fitness and physical training. It's not exclusively, but it's a lot of it. And I think it's just such a good reminder for people. And it's a reminder you can't get from a coach telling you. I can't tell you that you're capable. You have to prove it to yourself. It's an action thing. So if you can suffer a bit, go through some shit where you're like, holy shit, I'm not sure. I'm uncertain if I can do this, or, I second guess myself. That's a place where there's a lot of growth, right? Challenge brings change, and suffering has a place in training, because it is a opportunity for there to be some awareness that it will increase your confidence if you can recognize that there's suffering, and if you can overcome it, if you can get through it. Okay. Let's see. Some of these people I didn't even know. So I'm going to jump ships. I've got a few messages about over the past, 2 months or something. Popular people in the fitness industry, they've asked me kind of what I thought about them. Some of these people I don't have any opinions on, because I don't even know if I know them, but I made a little list. let me find this. The first one was, oh yeah, the knees over toes guy. Okay. So, yeah, I remember hearing about this guy, and I remember hearing about this guy on, I don't know where it was. He's been on a lot of podcasts, so he's doing a good job with that. And total, like initially, yeah, totally got the concept. I get the concept, knees over toes. It's, it's based on a miss, it's based on a myth, essentially, like misinformation that for a long time, I think maybe that cue was really prevalent in like the 90s or something, that you shouldn't squat, do any type of squat, back squat, front squat, overhead squat with your knees over your toes. And it was, the whole concept was that, I wasn't a part of this, but the whole concept was that you do more damage to your knees if your knees pass your toes. So I still hear people, um, sort of ingest that myth and think that it's the proper way to do it. It's definitely not. But this is his whole concept, or a lot of the concept. What do I think about him? I was actually a little bit upset initially, because I was like, what a sellout, man. That was my initial thought, and I'll explain how this changed. But the initial thought was, what a sellout. Like, this is such a fucking simple myth that he's capitalizing on. But as I started looking at more of his stuff, I realized that he's giving good information and he's helping people. So that's really what I care about. I learned some of these principles of like knees over toes in a course I took probably 10 years ago, a functional muscular assessment course taught by a chiropractor. And the whole idea is that when your knees are over your toes in a squat, you actually recruit more muscle fibers around in your glutes, but around your knees as well, your vastus medialis, that teardrop shape on the inside of your quad. And if we don't use it, we lose it. So if we don't use range of motion and train range of motion, then we can get more hurt. We can increase our rate of injury, and we aren't as capable. So range of motion is pretty important, especially as we're aging, or especially in the aging population. He has some really cool stuff around kind of bulletproofing other joints as well, which is cool. So that's awesome. So what do I think about it? I'm like, not all the information that he's talking about is new. I'm aware of quite a bit of it, but he does have some cool concepts. So that was neat to hear that. It's cool when people reach out and ask me what I think about people, because a lot of the times they're just good ideas that I can share more too. Mark Bell was one of the other ones, because I have mentioned him and stuff, and I've tried to get him on the podcast. I don't know if he gave me his real number, but he did give me his number one time, or whoever runs his social media gave me a number one time, and I texted and nothing happened. So I like Mark Bell. Yeah, Mark Bell's cool. He obviously was a huge part of the powerlifting community. For me growing up, he was a big inspiration, because he was another one of these guys like really pushing shit, really popularizing some training methods, and really popularizing working hard and training hard. Slingshot is a cool product he came out with. I think he's a good speaker. I think he's I like how active he is on social media and in media. I think it's great. Yeah, no, he's cool. I want to get him on the podcast. He does have a video that's probably one of my favorite videos that I ever watched. I used to watch it before I was just like before the gym, for a pump up video. And I forget what it's called, but I found it sort of recently, and it has Metallica 1, that track in the back of it. And it's a really pump up song. It's him, Brandon Lilly, it's a bunch of powerlifters, and it's just a pump up video. Someone asked me what I thought of Michelle Lewin, and I added her on Instagram after they mentioned her. So I didn't know who it was, but she's a Venezuelan bodybuilder. And I mean, she's really attractive. She has 10 million followers. So she's a bit of an influencer. I don't really, she doesn't seem to be pushing things too much. So I don't really have much to like say about her content other than I think, sex sells and attractive people can generally sell stuff a little bit easier, I think. Uh, Not to discount her. She might be saying and doing a lot of cool stuff. I don't know. She did have a video where she was playing drums, so I got pumped about that. Mark Cleary was on here. I like Mark. Yeah, Mark Cleary is cool. I used to work with him, and we were trainers at the same time. He's a good dude. He lives in Peterborough. If you guys need a boxing coach, boxing/bodybuilding coach, he's on there. He's in there. He's great. And then there was two CrossFit athletes that I had on here that someone asked me what I thought of them. So Rich Froning was the first one. So I've been following CrossFit for like honestly a pretty long time. I think since 2000. And well, I hired Chris Longo. How old was I there? I think maybe like 24. I was about 24 years old. So maybe 10 years, 10 or 11 years I've been following CrossFit. That's cool. I like CrossFit, by the way. This could be a whole separate podcast because there's still people that I hear that don't like it, and that's cool. I don't care if you like it or not. No, I'm not endorsed. I like it. I like a lot of methods of training, and I think it's a lot of fun, and it's a cool community. I think there's some things that I disagree with too, but anyway, the question was, what do I think of Rich Froning? I don't know how to say this other than he was a role model, and he's inspirational because he's a pretty humble, I'd say very humble, crazy athlete. He's got a crazy physique. He super hard worker from what I see. His diet was like borderline absolutely terrible, which is always strange to hear and to share about someone that's such a good athlete and had such a shitty diet for so long. Like truly pretty crappy diet, which is wild. So I don't have anything bad to say about Rich Froning. He's awesome. If you don't know who that is, he won the CrossFit Games. Was it 4 years consecutively? So an absolute monster. Like anyone, man or woman that wins CrossFit, even that places and then wins consecutively is just, it's absolutely insane. The amount of fitness and genetics and work ethic you'd have to have in order to do that. And then the last person they said was, what do I think of Matt Fraser? So Matt Fraser, I've watched so many videos and so many interviews and stuff. Matt Fraser, again, it's CrossFit, so I like it. He has an Olympic lifting background, like a weightlifting background. By the way, guys, just so you know, a lot of people are newer to fitness that are watching this. This isn't a big deal, but when people say weightlifting, like the actual term weightlifting refers to Olympic weightlifting, which refers to Olympic weightlifting, which is snatching and clean and jerking. So when you watch the Olympics and it says weightlifting, there's only two exercises. It's snatch and clean and jerk. Sometimes there's little variations to the clean and jerk, but that's a little term people misuse, and that's not a big deal at all. But just if you're listening to this and you don't want to make that mistake again, weightlifting doesn't necessarily mean you're lifting weights. I know that's hard to understand. The correct term for that would be like resistance training, but does it really matter? Not at all. But anyway, Matt Fraser had a weightlifting background. He was the other guy that won. He won 5 years, I believe. Yeah, 5 years. And he got second place 1 year as well. So just absolutely dominant as hell. Like needless to say, great athlete, great physique, training ethic was crazy. And I think if you're to learn anything from these types of people, there's no way you can be that good and be doing things for accolades or be doing things for attention. Like I just don't think it would last. I don't think the will would be strong enough. If your goal was, I want to look good. So here's where I'm taking it back. If you have a big goal, right? And by big goal, I mean a goal that you're really serious about, but the reasoning for it, the why, is for other people. And I don't mean like a spiritual reason, whether it's God or a higher power. or to help other people, to lead by example, I think that's a really flimsy why. I'm not saying it's not logical or anything like that, but I think you're probably going to find yourself unmotivated a lot more often than someone that connects their goal to either a higher power, or they do it for like a real deep reason, other than, I want to post shit and I want to look better on Instagram and stuff like that. That's a pretty flimsy reason to have a goal. Go for it. Don't let me demotivate you. Don't let me discount why you're doing things. Just food for thought. If your goal is something that's serious and the why behind it is flimsy, recheck it. If you're second guessing it from listening to this, then chances are it was a pretty flimsy goal and you might not even really want it. Thanks for listening. See you next time.